The Rockpile Report, the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. Chris, we made it. We fucking made it.
You trying to tell me football's back?
Football is back. First of all, thank you for everybody who showed up throughout the offseason to listen to us fucking ramble about non-foot. Chris, over the course of a summer, it gets about as non-football content as you can get, right?
100%.
It's hard. Life is just difficult. It's hard to be... Like, it's hard. I can't imagine, like, for us being content creators, not saying, like, oh my God, well, we're obligated to do it, but we're obligated to do it. We kind of have to be here, in fact, contractually. Like, if we wanted to show up and sit behind these microphones every week and just sit here and go, I'm just here so I don't get fined. That's not technically incorrect, is it?
No, it's not.
So we already have some skin in the game. Plus, we're here because we have an enjoyment of getting behind these mics and talking about football in various capacities over the course of a season, regardless of what period of the season that may be. I feel like it's got to be tough as a person who likes podcasts, like genuinely enjoys listening to football conversations, to listen to podcasts in the summertime.
I mean, I listen to podcasts at work all of the time. I have Saturdays sports podcasts, Sundays comedy podcasts. July, it gets a little iffy there in July because there's a whole not like my two sports are football and hockey. Hockey, there's not a ton of content to be had in July, especially the end of July, and football can be hit or miss. But
I mean, if you're a fan of the Rockpile Report, it's mostly miss. But for some reason, you psychopaths show up every week anyway, which makes you think that for as unlikable as you and I can be, these people really do like us. Like, they're not coming for the riveting, mind-blowing sports conversation, Chris.
No.
Does that weird you out sometimes?
No.
Like, there's complete strangers who actually like us more than the people who do know us.
I mean, I don't get it.
Oh, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense to my wife, to my parents, to most of the people who know us well. So, guys, I crack a fresh one because football is, like, all of the conjecture's finally over. We can finally get down to real football. The 53-man rosters around the league are set. And I feel like it's always bittersweet when you start talking about who's on the final roster. Because if you're someone like me, or someone like Tyler Dunn, or somebody who sees a little bit more of the humanity and that human element of football than maybe a casual fan does. I mean, I hope in the wake of this whole Damar Hamlin thing, a few more people have their eyes open to it, but I'm not expecting miracles over here because that's just the human condition, right? Like, we eventually go back to what's comfortable. And that's treating this process like it's Madden the video game. And I don't know, these guys are just guys. Like, over 1,000 people just got laid off from their job over the course of 48 hours. Would you say it's about right?
Where at?
In the NFL.
Oh, players? Yeah.
Yeah. So you figure between, like, the guys who got cut and then, like, got reinstated, or the guys who get cut and brought back, the guys who get cut permanently, or the guys who make the 53 and think they're safe, and then the team finds a better option on the street and kicks you off. A lot of guys just lost their jobs. Here's what I think is funny. How many other industries exist across? I was thinking about this as I was brushing my teeth this morning. How many other industries exist in the world, or at least in this country, where that many people could be put out of work with no severance, no health care, no plan, and some politician or some social group doesn't use it as an opportunity to grandstand in politics?
I don't know.
I think that kind of underscores the fact that, because, Chris, we all know politicians are just octopuses. They'll take on whatever color and shape they have to in order to, I want people to like me and hear my message, and I want authority and control.
Or they stand at a podium and don't say anything. And then they get wielded away by handlers. No more questions.
Could have strapped that guy to a fucking hand truck and carted him out of there like Hannibal Lecter at that point. I mean, Jesus Christ. Here's the thing. Though even those super opportunists don't use the treatment of these people in this scenario to like grandstand, because they know we by and large don't care as people. We just don't care. So it is sad that all these guys get laid off and by and large nobody's thinking about them. We've already moved on. Again, you don't have to feel bad about it. It's just human nature. I understand it, but let's pour one out for everybody who is currently on the outside of the NFL looking in. That Montucky is cold. When you put them right next to the freezer in that fridge, Chris, they get frosty. I love it.
It's the way to do it.
It's also a sad day for anybody who's willing to dredge up old draft takes and draft crushes. Those are some of my favorites, Chris. Like, think about all of the hand-wringing I saw when the Jets signed James Robinson last year. Everyone's like, oh, no, they lost Breece Hall, but they got James Robinson. I remember when he won like 4 weeks of fantasy football for me 2 years ago. And then the Patriots signed him this year. He got cut from both those teams. Both of those teams have cut him. Then he gets signed by the Giants and cut again. Like, and why were Patriots fans so smug about that signing at the time? And why do they think that Zeke Elliott might not just be a slightly younger version of what just happened with James Robinson?
Zeke's past his prime. I mean, I wouldn't expect much from Zeke this year. I was more intrigued with what they did at the quarterback room.
Oh, you mean like they went almost like when fantasy someone goes zero running back? They went zero backup quarterback. That's kind of hilarious to me.
Yeah, but I think they got Bailey Zappi back on the PS.
Sure, but who's on your game? Are you only going to have one quarterback on your game day roster with those offensive tackles?
I mean, you're going to need more if that's your offensive line.
I love the fact that this has given rise to all of the Tom Brady's coming back talk. Do you know, like, so there's a movie called Green Street Hooligans, right?
Oh, so according to our lads, the Patriots claimed Matt Corral off waivers. Oh,
and he's wait, and is he on their game day roster?
He's listed as QB2 according to our lads.
See, nothing would make me happier than watching Tom Brady come back now to this Patriots team. This just under-talented, no pass-protecting version of the New England Patriots, because I'll tell you what, it's like that movie Green Street Hooligans, when at the end, when they're reading off, like, whose teams are going to play whose in their version of the playoffs, and the different soccer leagues and all the gangs for those soccer teams are, like, anxiously watching and Millwall gets lined up against West Ham, and the guy who's been running this other squad, who's been waiting his entire life to just get his hands on and kill this other guy, is like, yes. Yeah, my day is finally back. Josh Allen does not have an NFL win over Tom Brady. I would love for nothing more than Tom Brady to come back now with that dog shit football team so we can get, Chris, so he can get that W.
Yeah.
And not a good one, like a pummeling. Like a real embarrassing win. Like, hey, you should have stayed fucking retired, old man. Just grind our boots in him type of a win. I would love nothing more than that. The idea, it makes me so happy. Also, remember Brashad Perryman?
Heard of the guy?
He was part of the 2015 wide receiver draft class, which might be one of the worst of our lifetime.
Is that the Calvin Benjamin?
No. That one was bad too, but the 2015 one, there wasn't there was one or two notable receivers in the top 4 rounds, and everybody else, Dorial Green Beckham, there was all these name players that were supposed to be something that not even were mediocre, just never made a dent. Brashad Perryman being one of them. He gets taken by Baltimore at the end of the first round. He proceeds to get cut by the Colts this year. And even if that's just a procedural one and they try to sneak him back onto the 53 because he's like a vested veteran, it'll make his 7th time being released by an NFL team in 8 years. That guy was there was teams going, oh my God, how did the Ravens luck into Brashad Perryman in the first round? He has been cut 7 times in 8 seasons. How the fuck does that happen? That's a monstrous whiff. It means you're just talented enough to be in the NFL, and I could accept that if you were like a UDFA, if you were a 6th-round draft pick, everyone would go, look at that guy. Good for him. Brashad Perryman.
That's the draft for Amari Cooper. And then at 7, the Bears took Kevin White.
Kevin White.
Who had, I think he was coming off a broken leg.
I think he broke everything. I think that man was basically Mr. Glass from the movie Unbreakable. That was Kevin White. He was Mr. Glass. Never made an NFL impact. And Chris, go down that list. Who else?
Nelson Aguilar.
Okay. He's barely relevant.
Then Brashad Perriman, Philip Dorsett.
Okay.
Devin Smith.
Yeah.
Dorian Green-Beckham.
Yeah.
Devin Funches.
Yeah.
And then I think we're getting into the 3rd round. Tyler Lockett.
Okay. Useful.
Jalen Strong. Chris Conley. Sammy Coates.
Sammy Coates.
Ty Montgomery. Now we're getting into the 4th round. Jamison Crowder. Justin Hardy. All useless. Vince Mayle. Never heard of the guy.
Yeah.
DeAndre Smelter. Never heard of you.
Smelter.
Yeah.
That's the thing you do.
Rashad Green.
Yeah, see none of these guys.
And now we're into the 5th round where the Vikings took Stephon Diggs.
Look at that. Look at that. And you know what's funny? Brashad Perriman, over his 8-year career, he has fewer career receiving yards than Stephon Diggs had over his last 2 seasons. Awesome. He was taken in the 1st round of that same draft. Awesome. You have to love it. Also, you know what it reminded me of too? Bills fans were mad about the time we cut Jake Hollister in 2021 because they were like, oh my God, he was going to be our tight end too. What are we going to do now? He's been cut since by the Jags, the Vikings, and the Raiders with just 10 games and 0 starts since then. So maybe those teams were just desperate, right? Mm-hmm. Like maybe those GMs saw exactly what Brandon Beane saw. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Jake Hollister, I saw that and I chuckled. Yeah, there's a lot of, if you really want to dig, there's always some bad dirt. Like, it's like freezing cold takes. I can go back in time and find you all the draft hype and all of the punditry, and I can find you every draft cutdown day at least 3 or 4 things to laugh about. I mean, hell, look at the Raiders. Chris, you could write a book about how bad the Raiders drafts under Mike Mayock and Gruden were.
I put it more on Gruden than I do on Mayock. Gruden had say. I think it was all Gruden, and Mayock just had to go along with it.
Then what are you doing there as GM? Don't call yourself that.
It's free money. He only has to come out and speak once, twice a year, maybe 3 times.
He was already making free money. He was sitting on TV bloviating about the draft. You were stealing money already. You just stole more of it. See, he was Icarus. He flew too close to the sun. So now as we turn our attention to the Bills' 53-man roster, or at least 53-man rosters around the league. At first, because I had a couple things here. Just things that surprised, Chris. Was there anything league-wide that surprised you?
Yeah. Reed getting cut for the 2nd year in a row.
I think it's the 3rd year, actually.
I think it might be 2, where he had to take a day off, a legal day off from work before he could come back in and sign a new contract. My
favorite is that every time it happens, I get at least a dozen text messages, like DMs, like, oh man, is everything okay? Yes. Why wouldn't it be? I actually laid it out. Spencer German, he works for, what's the radio station? Do you remember off the top of your head? Yeah, it's called W It Doesn't Matter. It Doesn't Matter in Cleveland. He does Cleveland sports radio. And he was like, I don't understand why they would. He goes, why does a team even need a long snapper? And he brought up this idea of like, well, we could just do away with the long snapping position. It's not like there's other guys who can't snap a football. And I found myself defending the position, not even because of Reed, but kind of because of Reed. Like, Chris, does this make sense? Snapping, it's not just a guy who can snap the ball. It's that you need somebody who can snap the ball the way your kicker likes it to be placed. A guy who can put the ball exactly where your punter likes it to be placed so that he can punt it and get the maximum hang time on it, if that's what he's looking for, right?
Yeah, but then you can go into who's holding the ball.
Well, I'm talking about so let's say punting. Punting. Let's just use that.
Yeah.
So your punter has a very specific spot he likes to do. If you're punting for hang time, not for distance, he has a very specific spot he wants it. The CBA very strictly lays out practice time. Here's the amount of time you are allowed to force these players to practice. You could probably get Ryan Bates, since he already snaps in the shotgun, to snap an extra 5 feet a little bit more accurately than he does the shotgun snap, right?
I believe it was Harrison Phillips was the backup snapper.
Okay.
When he was here.
But let's just say in theory, you could, so that's a proof, you could take a defensive or offensive lineman and train them to do the thing.
Yes.
Okay, but then what happens when that guy gets hurt? One of your trench players gets rolled up on, as tends to happen in the middle of a football game. Now the guy that you've trained to snap the ball is gone because he's involved in a lot of high contact play. Now you go for it on every fourth down because you actually can't punt a football. Is that a world you want to live in?
I mean, I know they don't like that in Cleveland. I mean...
I'll take it a step further.
Who's holding in Cleveland?
I don't know. Who is?
You don't know who the Cleveland holder is?
No, why would I know that? What is it, Nate Geary?
No.
He's the best holder in Buffalo, dog.
Have you heard of a gentleman by the name of Corey Bojorquez?
That's amazing.
Yes. Tell Spencer that Cade York is not the problem.
Is that the problem?
It's who's holding the ball.
I like that guy's like a bad penny. Everywhere he goes, it's just a bang.
Yeah, he was in what?
Mason Crosby had his worst career year in Green Bay. The year Corey Bojorquez was his holder.
And then he leaves and back to the norm.
People are like, oh, Crosby, he's still old, but he can actually kick again.
Cade York had a decent first year. Oh, now Bojorquez is holding for him, and he's terrible. Because Bojorquez doesn't know how to hold a football.
Dustin Hopkins, they trade for him. I love the number of people who drafted him in fantasy football already before the trade. And now Dustin Hopkins is just going to get Bojorquez. Just Bojorquez into irrelevance. I was actually joking about that, the trade. Like, there's really no cuts that surprise me other than Alex Leatherwood. That's what made me think of Mayock and Gruden. Alex Leatherwood getting cut from Chicago. It's just another pick from the Raiders' disastrous 3-year run of Gruden and Mayock. Leatherwood getting waived means that all of the first-round picks taken by the Raiders during those 3 classes, right, out of all 3 of them, Josh Jacobs isn't just the only one still with the team. He's the only one regarded as a starter in the NFL.
Makes sense.
You took 5 players, I believe 6, in that 3-year span. None of them are starters except for one, and you don't want to pay the fucking guy.
It was all because of the Khalil Mack trade, right?
Oh my God.
They traded Mack, got all these picks, and this is how they used them.
Trades were the interesting thing. Like, you saw Arizona moved offensive tackle Josh Johnson, who a lot of Bills fans liked. Trey Lance got traded, which apparently the Bills were in on, which is interesting, but not really, because if you think about what that means, quarterbacks are a commodity, right? Like, we've always tried to do this where it's like, hey, let's go get Case Keenum and then never let him play. We need Mitch Trubisky. Why? He's worth $2 million because if he goes and signs a big contract, he helps out our compensatory pick formula. You could bring in a Trey Lance for the same thing. It's a buy low, sell high proposition where if he does nothing else but be what he is now, he's still a decent backup quarterback option and wouldn't force you to change what the Bills' offense is a ton. At the same time, if he let's say he with some real coaching and kind of grooming can become something of a borderline starter, top 20 starter in the NFL. He's going to go sign a decent contract, and that's going to help you in compensatory picks later. There's no bad reason to trade a late round pick for a guy like Trey Lance. There just isn't. So I'm happy Brandon Beane was in on that conversation. The Cowboys were a little more desperate, which seems weird considering Dak Prescott. Like, I don't know. Is he just their guy? How much longer is he their guy?
For the foreseeable future until they get a top pick.
I laughed out loud at the Dustin Hopkins trade because I'm like, here's this guy who's about to go into another season with this team in LA that really looks like if the cards could ever just fall their way, if their team could just stay healthy. This is a team that in 2 games last year had Kansas City on the fucking ropes and let them off the hook literally at the last minute. If they could just get a few things to break their way one time, that's a team that could win the AFC West. And at the same time, they just can't get out of their own fucking way. And then they've got this kicker who's all excited to be there because he goes, man, this is as close to contending as I've been in so long. Oh, fuck, you shipped me off to Ohio? Ohio. I was in LA. There's no snow here. Now you're going to ship me off to the armpit of America. Awesome.
I mean, I'm sure the taxes are better.
Maybe. That's maybe the only silver lining to this entire thing for that guy.
Or the place you'd have to look at Cleveland's schedule. How many times are they playing in Florida and Texas? I've said it to Reed a couple of times. I'm like, so this is like your favorite season because you're at Miami, at Jacksonville, at Tampa, at Houston. Tax savings.
I love how few people understand how that works. Like, the state you do the work in is what dictates the taxes you pay, not where you live.
Yes.
So it is kind of funny that these guys do bounce around the league playing where they play, and it's like, hey, that can make a difference. It makes a difference in the paycheck at the end of the year. What? Reed has, 5 game checks that he's just not taxed on?
Yeah.
Other than federal taxes?
Yeah, depends on where the game is. I wonder how it works for for the game in Jacksonville when you play overseas.
True, if it's overseas. I don't even know. Call in if you have an idea. The trade of Boogie Basham. First of all, Chris, you know I love patting myself on the back for things.
Yeah. I love patting myself on the back for spelling errors.
Yeah, you fucking couldn't spell irritate. How do you not?
It's just a miss. It's a miss. It was one letter off. I wake up at 3:00. I'm surprised I didn't have a text message from you saying, hey, go get this audio. I wake up and I roll over and I grab my phone and I'm like looking through Twitter and I'm like, oh, Isabella got cut. And then somebody at Reed gets cut. I'm like, oh yeah, rosters are due today. So now I'm just like fast scrolling, and then I see that Boogie Basham is traded to the Giants. And then I immediately roll out of bed, I come down to the studio, and I grab that. I know exactly where that clip is in that episode. That was from November 2021. And then cut the clip, open up the Photoshop, start making just a basic graphic, and I can't type irritate. It does. I was going to go with reminisce as a word in there, but then I changed it at the last minute to irritate because I know Greg was irritated.
Well, here's what I love about you misspelling irritate the way that you did. Most people would think that if you're going to misspell a word, you'd forget something on the end.
Not in the middle.
You somehow forgot the letter in the middle that gives the entire word shape. You jammed a bunch of a soft letter, a soft R into a bunch of vowels and called it a word and fucking hit send. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious.
I even fixed it twice because of a thing called a drop shadow. I was like, ooh, I made it without a drop shadow, and I was like, let's do a drop shadow. So
you looked at this multiple times and still fucked it up.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, guys, he put out a clip of me making Greg Thompson lose his shit when I brought up the fact that we drafted Boogie Basham instead of Creed Humphrey. And it still remains hilarious to this day. You can go listen to it over at our Twitter, at Rockball Report. The trade of Boogie Basham, I'm conflicted because I feel good that I called it, and I feel bad that return just sucks. What is that, Bean? That's all you could get for... I would almost have rather kept him at that point.
What it was, Basham in a 7th for a Giants 6th?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Like, basically, you just called him another 7th-round pick. Like, hey, we'll give you 2 7s if you give us your 6. What's happening here? Your 2nd-round pick. That's the guy? All these people pointing out that Brandon Beane has been terrible in the 2nd round, they're not wrong.
Well, there's a lot of, you could say Elam, 1st-round pick. We don't know where he stands.
No, but the 2nd round specifically has been real bad. Now, obviously, we hope James Cook proves him right and that he can kind of break that trend, but what has he done with 2nd-round picks that really stands out to you as positive?
Well, we're better at the end of the draft than early in the draft.
Luckily.
Benford, Milano. Just imagine if we hit on like 1 or 2 2nd-round picks.
Yeah, but
it would have been a lot easier.
Would you rather be the team? Would you rather be a guy saying to yourself, man, if we could only hit on some of those deeper picks, you know, I really think that our team could be really, really solid because we would have cheap depth, blah, 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 blah. Rather than being the team that's lamenting constantly whiffing on top 60 and 90 picks. Zach Moss.
Yep.
Fucking AJ Epinesa until last year when he somehow got 6.5 sacks that I don't even remember. Like it was the most meaningless 6.5 sacks I've ever seen in my life. At no point did I think Epinesa was a factor. And then at the end of the year, I took a look back and went, wait a minute, he did what? The fuck he did? Oh, yeah, I guess he did have 6.5 sacks. And the concept that they could have they got trade offers for both and they decided Epinesa was the guy. I mean, I guess. And if you were going to cut him, at least you got something for him. But Jesus Christ, guys, we have to have better. If you're going to do this, just trade up in the 1st round then. Like, give away that 2nd-round pick and actually move up in the 1st round out of the basement and get a player like when we got leapfrog for Kyer Elam for Trent McDuffie, who's a very good corner for Kansas City. Fuck it. Take that 2nd-round pick and fire it into the fucking sun then for all I care. Just get it out of here. Be ready in coming seasons, Bean, to please just take that 2nd-round pick, package it up as part of a trade, and get us a player that means something. I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm tired of this. Well, what about our day 2? Fuck day 2. Day 2 is the worst. I don't want to hear any more about day 2 for the Buffalo Bills. Now that I've got that off my chest, let's take a quick look at the Bills' final 53-man roster and just kind of some of our thoughts. The first thing I have is our offensive line makeup, and it's probably the biggest area of surprise for me, if I'm going to be honest with you guys.
Did you like the pickup of Ifedi?
Oh, I did, and I've got a great analogy for that. Chris, losing Tommy Doyle sucked. Tommy Doyle was looking pretty athletic. He was looking like the guy they were trying to groom to be like, hey, there won't be that big of a drop-off if Spencer Brown goes down. Maybe he becomes consistent enough he could be our swing tackle. Major blow. I thought that that's what would make Dave Quessenberry even more valuable. And here we are, living in a world where a pair of sophomore players in Alec Anderson and Ryan Vandermark are playing significant depth roles on the 53-man roster for a team that thinks it can contend for a Super Bowl. Vandermark, he's old for being a sophomore in the NFL. I mean, he was 24 when he signed with the Colts as a UDFA last year. So that would make him 25. So he's probably going to be 26 here shortly.
Makes sense.
For your second year in the NFL, I mean, that's pretty old. He's a huge player with a really high RAS score. I mean, a guy who got an elite agility grade and great explosives in his drills and at the combine. And he seems to fit the mold of what the Bills have pivoted to in terms of their offensive lineman archetype. They no longer want Darrell Williams. They no longer want a Ty Nsekhe. They no longer want a Cody Ford. Now what they want are guys who are both big but also high-level athletes. I think that's why Ryan Bates was forced to take a backseat to Osiris Torrance. They found a guy who's mammoth, but also a little more athletic than you might give him credit for, and that size differential with what you'd call equal athleticism to Ryan Bates is what put him over the top. And then, like, Alec Anderson, He's a converted tackle. Like, Alec Anderson, converted tackle. Wasn't terrible in the preseason, playing guard. One of the Bills' more impressive run blockers of the preseason. He led the team in run block reps. Played 4 different positions: center, left guard, and right tackle. And you know that nothing makes Sean McDermott pitch a half stack faster than an offensive lineman who can play multiple positions, right?
100%.
You know that the second he watched him move from one position to the next,
he'd blow the guy if he finds out that he wrestles.
He involuntarily started clapping when he saw him line up at another position. The ball hadn't even been snapped yet, and he was like, yep, yeah, get in there. This seems more with the two of them like a case of the devil you don't know being better than the devil you do know in the eyes of the coaching staff. They took a look at Quessenberry and said, you're athletically limited. I mean, we trusted you as a veteran to go out there and start these games, but we saw what you were as an athlete, and we see what we want this line to be athletically. And you're not going to get better. Right? You can only get worse. We want to see what a less polished but more athletic player can do in that role. And so these two guys are getting the shot. I don't begrudge it to them. Good for them. It concerns me, but what do I know? Right? I mean, there's risk. There's risk that those guys go out there after. How many times, Chris, does a player play really well in the preseason, and then the lights come on? Right? It's Monday Night Football, and you got to put Ryan Vandemark out there, and he just gets overwhelmed.
Yeah, I hope we don't have to see that.
I really hope we don't have to see it either. All in all, they're decent building blocks on the cheap that the team is going to need moving forward. And if they can prove that they're useful this season, that makes it all the better. My favorite thing about them being on the team is just that we have like so much control over their future, which is a really shrewd move by Brandon Beane, the contractual gangster that he is. We get 4 years of control if the team wants it. They've got 2-year deals as of today, so they play this season, they play next season. Next season, they're exclusive rights free agents. So if they want to play football, they're playing for the Buffalo Bills, unless we decide we don't want them to play. Then the following year, they're restricted rights free agents, which means that we get to put a tender on them if we want them, and a team can either meet the tender and give us a pick. I think one of them was a 7th-round pick and one of them was a UDFA, so original round tender really wouldn't matter. I don't think the team would do that, although maybe some team would look at it and go, hey, the base pay of $1.5 or $1.8 million, whatever it's going to be, is... We're not going to take a flyer on that guy just to do it. We'd probably want to pay him league minimum, not that. And so people would balk at it. But either way, we have roads to controlling their future contractually for a significant amount of time. You have to like that, right?
I like it.
But my favorite thing about this is the 11th hour signing of Jermaine Ifedi. I know there's a lot of people out there who say it's not ideal. But there's such a thing as value. And I mention that because Chris was at the liquor store today. Okay? Let's talk about value. So what was going through your head when you decided to pick up this bottle of Old Tub bourbon?
It's very simple. I wanted a bottle of bourbon, and that's bottled in bond, which means they're
50% alcohol, 100 proof.
They are not cutting corners. There's a very strict guidelines to having to make bottled in bond, and it was $16
by the James B. Beam Distilling Company.
Jim Beam.
So the Jim Beam Distilling Company makes a $15 whiskey called Old Tub. Now, it's not your liqueur nonsense. Like what was that? The like we're not talking about the American blended whiskey or the Kentucky Gentlemaners, or I like to call #fake whiskey. It's got a rubber stopper, not a true cork. So they're already cutting corners on the packaging, Chris. In terms of the bourbon itself, have you ever tasted this?
No, I haven't.
Oh.
I hope it's good.
It's $15.
It's bottled in bond. You're not cutting corners on it. Plus, it's in a glass bottle.
for being a 100 proof whiskey, Chris, that is incredibly smooth. I'm going to challenge you to go get yourself a glass right now with a rock in it, and you got to hit that. Now, I bring this up, guys, because just like this $15 bottle of Old Tub bourbon, Jermaine Iafetti, it's not the prettiest thing. And when you hear how you got it on the cheap, you go, yikes. And is it ever going to replace, the Blue Note? Chris, your thoughts?
I like it.
That's an easy drinking whiskey.
It's
You said that's where? Global Wine and Spirits?
Yeah.
I'm
It was on sale for $16.
I will be stopping in to get myself some. Just like Chris snagged himself a $15 bottle of whiskey that was on sale at the store, Brandon Bean snagged himself a $15 bottle of offensive lineman because it was on sale and available on the cheap.
I mean, I was trying to find Benchmark bourbon, and they had Benchmark, but they didn't have the full array of Benchmark. I was looking for full proof because it's like a 20 also cheap like Old Tub, except it's from Buffalo Trace.
Here's the thing. So just like Old Tub, you have Jermaine Iafetti. He's a tackle who spent he's a veteran. He's played for multiple teams. He's played in multiple systems. The thing he does is pass protect. Run blocking, not his cup of tea. But he pass protects well, and in an offense like ours, Chris, isn't that at a base level what you would...
We don't like to run the ball.
No, but that's what you would want if you had to call in a backup.
Yeah.
If you had to call in a backup who wasn't a stellar athlete, you better be able to pass protect well. Well, we went out and found ourselves a cheap veteran on the market who can do the thing that we want to do.
Former first, right?
Yeah. So the same way that you go out and you buy this $15 bottle of whiskey, if you want to catch a cheap buzz on a Wednesday night, and you don't want to pay a fortune for the whiskey buzz you're going to give yourself during the week. We don't want to pay a fortune for it's like, oh man, I really wish I could have gotten myself a Blue Note, or Chris, what's another? I'm trying to think of like a
high end, an Eagle Rare,
like an Eagle Rare, a Basil Hayden.
Basil Hayden's
Basil Hayden's it's middle of the road, but it's delicious.
But you grab it because you're a fucking monkey.
No, you know what I grabbed?
Like, Basil Hayden, Woodford Reserve, all the basics.
There hasn't been a bottle of Woodford in my house in forever. How dare you besmirch me with that? So, Jermaine Iafetti is that thing that you were like, hey, you know what? This is going to get me through. It's going to get me over the hump, and it didn't. And it's a great value. It didn't cost me anything. It didn't cost me much. Here's people complaining about that trade for Josh Johnson, a tackle who everyone goes, man, he might have starting ability in the NFL. I really wish my team could have given up a future draft pick for him. Instead, by just doing nothing, Brandon Bean found himself a veteran tackle at the right tackle position who you go, if nothing else, he's at least adequate as a pass protector, and that's all I fucking need. Bang. Bang. And it didn't cost you much. Didn't cost you much, but a little patience, maybe a little heartburn, a couple shekels. I love it. He is the old... I will, like Chris, for the rest of the season, I'll be referring to him as Old Tub. And the funny thing is that if I were to say it in front of him, he'd probably punch me because he thinks I'm trying to be insulting.
Yes.
Oh, look, it's that Old Tub Iafetti. Jesus. But I like it. I like the makeup of this offensive line group. I think we're deeper. I think Edwards being there is also a sneaky, used to be starter depth option. Like, we now have young projects who are super athletic. We've got veterans who can step into a guard role or a tackle role if necessary. I like the build of this. We have a center that we know our quarterback trusts. For the first time in a long time, I'm not worried about what happens to our starters. I shouldn't say that. Knock on wood, nothing bad happens to our starters. But for the first time in a long time, I feel better about this depth. Right? I feel better about this depth than a lot of other positions in the NFL. And a lot of other teams in the NFL would kill to have this kind of functional depth for what your offense wants to be. I think the other position group that we have that at is the cornerback group. In fact, just defensive backs in general. If you want to scroll down and take a look at those DBs. When we look at the defense, there was all that talk about how the team's disappointed in the development of Kyrie Elam, talking about how they're not sure who's going to play where and who's going to be the number 2, whether Elam even deserves to be on the roster. Where does Benford fit into all this? Well, at the end of the day, you've got White, Benford, Elam, and Jackson. Those are your guys. And you kept them, and just looking at it, that's the deepest cornerback room we've had in how long, Chris?
I couldn't even tell you. Probably early 90s, mid 90s.
Yeah, I would challenge anybody out there.
Did we have Winfield and Clemens together? Was that a cornerback tandem that we had?
That might have been a corner. What year would that have been? What's a Clemens year? Give me a Clemens year, and I will look, because that's what I love about our lads. The archive dates are right here. Give me a year.
I would, God, was that like 06?
They only go back to 07. Damn, let's see.
I'll have to Google Nate Clements and Antoine Winfield and see what
Okay, so in 07, our cornerbacks were Terrence McGee and Kawaki Thomas.
So we had Clemens from 01 to 06.
Okay, so we just missed the cutoff there. But yeah, no, Nate Clements, back when he was in his prime. Terrence McGee, when he was in his prime. Like, Terrence McGee was very good for this football team. But at some points, you have to look at this and you go, hey, like let's look at the years. So 2020 was the year that we went to the AFC title game.
That only overlapped 2 years.
Okay. 2020 was the year the Bills went to the AFC title game. Our corners were Trey White. And no, this would have been the year prior. It was in 2020. That was Josh Norman? Jesus. No, 2020. Here we go. Yeah, Josh Norman got punked during that one game. Let's look at October, what our roster looked like. Tre'Davious White, Saron Neal, Levi Wallace. Levi Wallace was out there at cornerback. Every single one of the cornerbacks on our roster right now are better than Levi Wallace, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So for as long as the Bills have been contending in the postseason, we haven't had cornerbacks as deep as we currently are. That, in and of itself, call this group a win and fucking move on. I also look at the roster. First of all, isn't it crazy that the clone of Damar Hamlin is actually really good at the game of football too?
Yeah.
Like, is anyone surprised at how well that clone is playing? The people who think this stuff should... This is why I keep saying I have this thing where we should pick a state. I used to say Florida, Uhlberg, I'm sorry. I used to say Florida used to be the place where we should not only propose all of these crazy ideas would be acceptable, but we also, don't charge any tax. Tell people we're not going to charge federal tax if you live in Florida. Relax a lot of laws that, scoff laws and the dregs of society would be attracted to, and encourage people to move here. People who think like this, get them to move there. And then what we do is one night, middle of the evening, the National Guard shows up and just walls the fucker off. And we sell it to Cuba. And we say, listen, Cuba, we're sorry about that whole embargo thing. Here's how we make it up to you. You guys can have Florida. Good luck, guys. You're all Cubans. Now stay on your side of the wall. Now, as you can imagine, that was not a popular thing when I pitched it in 10th grade history class. As you can figure, it did not go over well. And I believed my high school teacher categorized it as the thinking of a sociopath. Which, point taken. But with that said, Damar Hamlin making the roster is good news for this football team because he looked sharp in the preseason. And everything else just kind of fell into place for this team. I mean, Chris, look at the Our-Lads page. We were talking about Cam Lewis. Cam Lewis, my fear was that he was going to make this roster. I mean, you feel bad about the injury, but I watched him play last year. People go, oh, no, he had moments. Yeah, he had moments where he looked competent. Then he had moments where he got put on national TV and highlight reels because he allowed Justin Jefferson to catch one of the most improbable passes I think was thrown all NFL season last year. He allowed that to happen because he just lost his composure for a moment. I don't want that guy playing safety for me. Wrap Hyde, Poyer, and Hamlin are probably the most athletic group of safeties and the most proven group of safeties in terms of actual starts that we've had under Sean McDermott. True or false?
True statement.
Okay. So, guys, our defensive backs are the deepest they've been, with guys who have starting experience who you can trust, and you can platoon them however you want. You can utilize them on game day however you want. There's a million different strategies you can employ with all of these defensive backs. I love the way that this room came together, all of them. You know, Cam Lewis slides in as a nickelback and they find a way to keep Saron Neal on fine. I just didn't want to see Cam Lewis lined up as a depth safety. And I get my wish. This might be the deepest group of DBs McDermott has had to work with during his tenure here. Now, up in front of them, the defensive line, we all kind of knew that was going to be a tough spot to crack on the roster just because of the bodies at the position who had NFL experience. But is anybody surprised at how quickly the team, almost from the get-go, kind of protected Shaq Lawson from a real competition? He barely played. 33 total snaps between the 3 games, including, he had less than 20 when the Bills' quote-unquote starters were playing against Pittsburgh. He had 5 snaps in the final game. It was almost like they came into the preseason after camp going, we know we want Shaq Lawson on this roster. And the preseason snap count kind of shows you they already maybe had their mind made up that he was part of the final 53. Meanwhile, Epinesa played 53 snaps by comparison. Him and Boogie Basham were clearly playing for a job, and Epinesa won it. I just don't know. What do you think they based that on? Because I think Basham probably had people would argue Basham had a stronger preseason.
Could be. It's just there's a full room on that defensive line, so somebody had to go.
But so do you think the team looked at it and said, we understand that Basham's having a strong preseason, but also we've watched Epinesa have 6.5 sacks. If we're going to have a depth defensive end, we'd rather have it be the guy who had 6 sacks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like almost putting your thumb on the scale a little bit, but this is real life, guys. Not everything, you know what I mean? Not everything can be fair. And I think that's how things got stacked against Boogie Basham the way that they did. I like when you look at all of this in terms of what that defensive end room is now. The 5 players they brought in, Rousseau and Floyd as your 1 and 2 are perfectly fine. Balanced, veteran, good in both phases of the defensive game. If they're healthy when Kingsley gets sent down, right? Kingsley probably is the one who gets released and then signed to the practice squad in the middle of the season when Von Miller comes back, correct?
Makes sense.
Okay. But those 2 will get you by from a pass rush perspective. I also think it's awesome that Kingsley Jonathan's here. Wouldn't you? Even if he's probably inactive, right? You probably don't dress all 5.
No, unless you need to.
Exactly. So you're dressing 4. Kingsley Jonathan's probably one of your game day inactives a little more often this season. I first noticed him during the Bears game last year, and he just looked like a young guy he's got all this energy. He's just big and strong, physical, taking on offensive linemen. At the same time, he just looked like the game was moving a little fast for him. The one play he made where he got behind the line of scrimmage and almost picked off a pass, he's grossly offside. He jumped the snap. He diagnosed the play properly. He was like, oh, it's going to be a pass to that guy. And then just took off well before the ball was snapped. It's good to see that he's growing in the system enough that the team was like, we trust you and we want you here. And I like the fact that it gives you options. Again, it gives you this versatility you can employ. Because now with Lawson, Epinesa, and Jonathan available as rotational pieces, when you're playing a pass-heavy team, you can get away with saving Floyd for pass rush situations by having Lawson and Epinesa active and kind of rotating opposite Rousseau, kind of mixing in with them here and there, and then you throw Floyd out there. But you can get more pass rush reps for Floyd rather than having his productivity and his gas wasted on running downs. Then when you go into a game against a run-heavy team, you could activate him and have it be Rousseau, Lawson, Jonathan, and Floyd. And then you can give more of a heavier look on early downs with Jonathan. You could go Rousseau and Lawson. You can go Rousseau and Jonathan. And you can use that to kind of absorb those heavy running downs while still protecting Floyd as a pass rusher and a pass rush specialist. And then, fuck it, if you wanted to have all 5 of them active one game, just because you have that. I just like the fact that you can do that. You have bodies who can all set the edge well against the run and control blockers to give your linebackers the help they need, and they still look pretty okay from a pass rush perspective. And then obviously when Von Miller gets back, depending on what the health of this unit is at that point, you could be looking at one of the better defensive line rotations in football. Keeping the linebackers clean is going to be a huge thing, and that's the last position we're going to touch on. Linebacker. Were you shocked as I was to see Old Man Klein get the boot?
I mean, somebody over here, not physically in the room, has to drink a Seagram's.
Oh, yeah, Doug's a horse's ass. You hear that, Doug? I hope. What's a flavor you think Doug... what flavor does Doug deserve? He hasn't had to drink a Seagram's yet. This is his first one. What do we break? Do we break him in on the Calypso Colada, or is it a
You got to go Colado
Jamaican Me Crazy?
You got to go Colado. I mean, you look. The color's phenomenal. I mean, it looks like the water you see at a mini golf course.
Like I said, I think I said it once. Chugging one of those things is like someone rubbed a coconut on a shovel and then hit you in the face with it. It's not great. When I looked at that, first of all, I didn't think Sean McDermott had it in him to cut the old guy, but he took him outside the woodshed and put him down like Old Yeller. I bet you he teared up a little bit when he had to do it. You know that Sean McDermott loves his veteran players.
Oh yeah,
he loves his vets that he can put in front of young players. He just nothing makes him clap harder than it's an offensive lineman who plays multiple positions. Linebacker, he can play in front of other players. I'll never forgive him for Ramon Humber. I never will. The play of Dorian Williams was such that it made him expendable. I mean, the kid might not have developed pass coverage chops at an NFL level yet, but let's not kid ourselves into thinking that Klein was going to give us that either. Meanwhile, Williams showed us that he has good instincts for the run game. He's got the requisite speed and physicality for the linebacker position overall. And ultimately, if you wanted to tell me that Williams is slightly more of a liability and that he has a lower floor than Klein is right now, I'd take that with the understanding that he has an opportunity to grow as a valuable contributor and has a much higher ceiling compared to what Klein is right now. The A.J. Klein that we signed back in what? Was it 2020?
Yeah. Because he had a hell of a game against the Seahawks.
Yep.
In front of no one.
He's no longer that player. That's what happens when you're 30-something years old. What he is right now is maybe a different version of better of what Dorian Williams is in some ways. But this guy at least has a future. And I'm happy the team said, okay, we're not going to let this veteran presence who we think we can trust stand in the way of what the future might look like. I do like that. That makes me happy, and it almost gives me hope for what the psyche of this team's front offices and their mindset towards player acquisition is moving forward. Terrell Bernard looks to be your starting middle linebacker, Chris. Schrodinger's middle linebacker. Guys, the analogy's spot on. We haven't watched him suck at playing middle linebacker with our own two eyes, so we choose to believe that he won't until he does. Now, maybe he steps into the role and he's good. We don't know because we didn't get to fucking see it all preseason. But I think it's telling that he's listed as the starter on the depth chart in front of guys who, Chris, Klein played a heavy dosage of middle linebacker.
Yep.
He got cut. Terrell Dodson played a heavy dose of middle linebacker. He was playing in the fourth quarter of a preseason football game. I don't think Bernard had to do much to win the job. He just had to sit there and watch the other guys lose it. Now, the scary thing is going to be if Bernard comes out and looks like he's in over his head is in terms of not just the play that's required, the physicality that's required to play middle linebacker, but the communication. They're not going to have guys rotating helmets on the sideline. Matt Milano's not going to be... You want to believe Matt Milano's your dime backer, but he may not be. Or they may have a DB who they put out there in dime situations who gets to wear the mic. It might be a Taylor Rapp who they bring down to play in the box as your extra DB. Maybe he's the guy who's mic'd up. I don't know. I just don't see a world where Terrell Bernard can do this job well if he doesn't have that communication piece down. And I'm just sad that we didn't get to see it during the preseason, so I as a fan don't feel better about knowing that he can do this. Like our first, if he truly is on track to play, which we're going to talk about with Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills during this week's AFC East Roundup, we don't know what his trajectory is. He may be on track to play week 1, but that sucks when in live play is when you're going to find out whether this guy is adequate, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, plus...
The coaching staff has to kind of be sweating a little bit over this one, right?
Yeah. Plus, there's somebody on the practice squad that...
Well, that's it. The saving grace of this entire thing.
Needs to get up to speed.
That's what stops me from calling this, like... the one position, like the position I'm sad about in terms of how it all shook out, because the wide receiver thing kind of went the way we thought it would, right?
Yeah. You do know that this is the third time that we've had to talk about Christian Kirksey.
I know,
because he was signed with Green Bay. We wanted him then. Then he went to Houston. We wanted him then. Now we get him. Third time's the charm. It's like same thing with A.J. Klein. The first time he was a free agent, we wanted him, and he didn't sign here.
He went to the Saints.
Yeah, and then we eventually got him, but good to know that we have Kirksey waiting in the wings to learn this system.
He is what you'd want in a backup middle linebacker. Will he ever be a high-end starter? No. But if he can get his feet under him and Bernard crashes from a communication standpoint, you at least know that there is an NFL veteran on your roster who you can turn to and say, listen, it's not your fault, Bernard. It's not your fault, Dodson. You guys just ain't cutting it. This guy's going to come in. He's going to quarterback the defense. He's going to do all the things. Sure, is he probably a little bit limited athletically compared to you guys? Yeah, but that don't matter because he can do the things we need a middle linebacker to do with this safety group. And that's it. That's it. But how long, what's the ramp-up time for that? Obviously, he's in football shape. He's been in camp all offseason. But this is a totally different defensive system from what he was playing in, with different terminology, different responsibilities per position. It's going to take some time. Like, I saw people being like, oh, no, we got him now. They'll just slot him in and everything will be fine. I would be shocked if they trusted Kirksey to take the field before week 3 or 4. Minimum. So even if Bernard is bad, you wouldn't see him get subbed out right away. Right?
Yeah.
I look at that and I go, at least I know that there's something. The same way I know that there's a Von Miller coming back. I can now look at this and say, hey, there's an Iafetti who doesn't know our fucking playbook. So he's going to need to get in there and really learn. There's a Kirksey who doesn't know our playbook, doesn't know our system, but he'll get in there and he'll get to working, and eventually somewhere down the road, if we have to rely on him week 5, 6, 7 or beyond, they'll hopefully be at least enough of the nuance they'll have under their belts to really come in and contribute. I think this might be the best the Bills have done at cut down of finding talent to add to the roster that fits an immediate need.
Yeah, it's not often you see that happen.
No. I don't know. I like the makeup of this. And then, Chris, if you can scroll down, did they say who was it? Did they list here who was added to the practice squad?
Oh, yeah, they got the whole thing. Isabella's on there. Kirksey for now.
Anku, Dick Garage, which I love the fact that Greg Thompson came up with that. Richard, he's just a hashtag Dick Garage, and it just, I snort laughed because I go, he's the only person who can say that. If I say it, people go, oh, you're being a pig.
Our practice squad QB's the guy from Texas, right? Played for the Longhorns.
Bushell? How the fuck do you pronounce that?
I'm going to say Shane Bushell. Call in if you know.
I don't know. He played for the Chiefs. That's all I know. When I look at this, all I can think of is Kendall Vickers. He's played in the NFL before. He's played for the Bills before. Eli Anku. He's played for the Bills for years. He chose to come back.
Yeah, he went to Texas and played at quarterback at SMU.
So think about how many of these guys who signed here and stayed flat out said, I got other offers and I chose to stay here. Ty Johnson is our practice squad running back. Like, NFL veteran running back. Again, they just keep stashing these guys away just in case, break glass in case of emergency. Now, obviously, some of those names will probably change when these reserves, like Justin Shorter, Balin Spector, Von Miller, as these guys come off the IR for the season. But realistically, that's how deep our team is that you got guys like Eli Anku who are just like, look, man, I'm just happy to be here. Christian Kirksey, who goes, I don't even know if my number will ever get called, but fuck it, I'm signing there. Andy Isabella, who goes, you know what? There's nowhere else I'd rather be than right here, right now. That's how you know that no matter what the media is fucking telling you about, oh, well, like what was Florio's stupid fucking article about how, oh, well, he goes, oh, are the Bills in danger of finishing fourth in the AFC East? No! Move on.
Dude, you are seeing that now. For those that like to pay attention to the national media, that's what we're getting this week. Is this seems to be the year where all of national media is, I'm going to be the one that predicts the Bills fall off this year, the same way that we used to do with the Patriots. Now, this is going to be the year they fall off. No. This year will be the year the Patriots fall off.
Chris, you have the audio of me calling WGR after that Kansas City Chiefs loss, the We're On to Cincinnati game.
Yeah.
Where I called for the death. I was like, this is it. This is the death of the Patriots. We're done here. Box them up.
That would have been, I'm going to pull this up here. That was in 2015. So that was like, I want to say maybe it was the year before we started.
Yep.
Podcasting. I'm going to pull up the Patriots Pro Football Reference. And
well, while you're pulling that up, I'm going to talk more about this ridiculous fucking storyline, the narrative they're trying to create of how in this article, Mike Florio literally says, and I'm quoting, both the Jets and Dolphins surpassed the Bills this offseason. In what universe? First of all, none of you have a better quarterback than me. Okay, so Miami has better wide receivers. 2 of them. Everything else about your wide receiver core can kiss my ass. You have no tight ends. You have no running backs. You have no offensive line.
You ready for this?
Hang on. You ain't better than me. If you're the Jets, you still don't have an offensive line. Great running backs. You have no wide receiver depth. Your defense is good, which should win you some games, but your quarterback is old and your offensive line is bad. I don't know how that's going to go. In what universe did they surpass Buffalo? In what universe, what fucking world? Meanwhile, you have priority free, like guys who those teams cut, the people that we know in the content creation community, Chris.
Yep.
Were mad that players that they exposed to waivers got snatched up by other teams or who signed elsewhere rather than come back to the practice squad. And, El Fartiaga's going, fuck, we could have used that guy. I don't know. The team is ridiculous for letting him go. And they go, oh, the Jets, waived this guy hoping they could get him on the practice squad. And he's got picked up on waivers. And they go, oh man, we really probably should have kept him on the 53. Not only do we not have any of that, what we have is veteran players going, nah, this is the place because I want to win. I want to win and I want to be here.
2014 New England Patriots lose on Monday Night Football to the Chiefs. They went 12-4. They won the Super Bowl. Then they proceeded to be 10-plus wins for the next 6 years with 2 more Super Bowls.
Yeah.
There you go, predicting the downfall of a team.
So for everybody who wants to kind of throw that narrative around, God bless you. I love it. All I have to do is look at that, the makeup of our practice squad, and I go, Andy Isabella wants to be here. Fucking like that's it. He goes, oh, I could be here. Christian Kirksey goes, hey, a couple teams reached out to me immediately. I want to be in Buffalo. Thank God they called me, because I don't want to go play for Cleveland again. I don't want to go play. Good. Chris, good. I'm happy about this. Jermaine Iafetti goes, holy shit, I can go play for the Bills? Hell yeah! Let me go do that instead of what? Because who isn't looking for a right tackle with experience?
A lot of people need tackles.
Fuck Mike Florio. Fuck that. And amen to this roster. I enjoy almost every single piece of this. This linebacker thing will concern me until Kirksey's up to speed, but even then, whatever. We talked earlier in the offseason about how you don't need stars at linebacker, right? You just need a defensive system that works. Hopefully Sean McDermott's got something up his sleeve. Chris, it's hard not to get excited about this team and then look around the division and get excited about what we're about to get into, because it's going to be the first time where there's at least multiple contending quality teams in this division.
Yeah, we're going to be the
we hit our stride as Brady left.
We're going to be the top division in the AFC and the NFL, I think, for that matter, all season. But last bit of news, right directly to my right, there is a whiteboard. If you're on YouTube, you see that it has lines on it. But we do have our Beer Watch board. So if you don't know, starting next week through the end of the season, Drew and I are counting our beers. Every night that we're recording in here, Wednesday nights, podcast recording night, drinking beers, keeping count. Send us your predictions. Tweet at us at Rockpile Report. DM us. Email us. rockpilereport716@gmail.com. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've made it this far through the video, we applaud you. Comment. Let us know what your prediction is for how many beers we're going to have. If you hit it right on the nuggets, we'll send you. Can we send them, if somebody gets it correct and actually reaches out, can we send them the Q42 family of products?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, you can get that. Maybe we'll send you something else.
And
but
guys,
it's a pinned tweet. You'll see a pinned tweet on our Twitter account. Give us your predictions. I will go. Here's our numbers. Ready for this? Last year, 330. Somebody got it right, but they didn't reach out. So you lose on your prize. 2021. This was only you drinking in 21. 209 beers. 2020, 335. 2019, 302. 18 was 261. 17 was our highest at 361. And then debuting this beer count in 2016, we had 269. So there's some context for you for your guesses. Tweet at us. Get them in. Can't wait to write everything down.
Guys, I'm just so happy that we can talk. We're so close to real football. Real, meaningful football. But for tonight, we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. This has been your Rockpile Report.